Next on Arizona 360, analyzing the results from Tucson's election.
A whole lot of people who voted for Regina Romero to be mayor said no on Prop 205.
Plus, hearing from the city's next mayor and what's at the top of her agenda.
The platform that I ran with, I want to put it into action the first 180 days.
And a familiar face rejoins the governing board of Tucson's largest school district.
As an attorney, I was a problem solver.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Duncan Moon, filling in for Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us. Ballots tallied in Tucson's election this week amounted to a historic victory for Regina Romero, making her the city's first Latina mayor. When she takes office next month, Romero will also preside over an all-Democratic city council.
Buenas noches, Tucson!
Celebrations began early Tuesday night for Regina Romero when the first results posted showed her with a double-digit lead over competitors Ed Ackerley and Mike Cease.
Tonight we celebrate, and tomorrow immediately we start to work. Thank you so much.
The same rang true for fellow Democrats down ballot, with Ward 2 City Councilman Paul Cunningham easily winning re-election.
1 year from tonight, the White House will be Democrat.
Community organizer Lane Santa Cruz and Air Force veteran Nikki Lee grabbed vacant seats for Wards 1 and 4, respectively.
I am so thankful to all of you who made this win possible, because like our new mayor said, that we don't do this alone, that it takes an entire community.
They'll join a council that hasn't had a raise in 20 years. Voters rejected Prop 409, once again turning down a measure to boost the mayor and council's pay. The opposition also overwhelmingly defeated Prop 205, better known as the Sanctuary City Initiative.
There is nothing more important than to say we will not stand for this.
The initiative's leader, Zaira Olivier, delivered an emotional speech to supporters and vowed to keep the movement alive.
I think we have two options. The city either work with us on passing the protections that we demand, or we do this all over again.
Fairly early in the process.
For a deeper dive into the results, Arizona Public Media's news director, Andrea Kelly, sat down with Tucson local media's Jim Ninsel, the Arizona Daily Star's Sarah Garrett-Gasson, and the Tucson Sentinel's Dylan Smith.
Regina Romero has promised to be a little bit different from Jonathan Rothschild as mayor, although one of the big things she mentioned was in climate policy. Jim, can we expect to see a different city with her in charge?
I don't know how much she alone can do that. I mean, obviously she's going to need the council to go along with her. When I watched Romero campaigning, she was all about, hey, I'm business friendly. Everything's about economic development. You know, she was definitely, I think she recognized that was a weak point in her resume, and people would be hammering her on that, and so she wanted to firm up that side of it. You know, what exactly we can do towards sustainability and such, there are steps the city can take, I suppose, and we'll see whether she can bring the rest of the council on board and what the cost of those steps are.
Well, let's go down that path, and I'll start with you, Dylan. When all three candidates were in a few weeks ago here, we asked them what the city would look like in 4 years if they win, and here's what she said.
Under a Romero tenure, we will see a good quality of life, economic opportunities for families, and we will see our climate action plan in action.
Will she have accomplished all that in 4 years?
Nah, I mean, there isn't anybody who has a position like that who accomplishes everything they put on their
Just because
list.
The list is too long?
Well, and also, you know, the mayor of Tucson essentially just has a bully pulpit. They have, you know, the most attention paid to them because of that office, but they are just one vote on the entire mayor and council, and you need to get those people to go along with you as well. There's very little unilateral power.
It'll be her job as mayor, Mayor Romero, to stand up and be a leader and not just talking about these are our priorities, but to work behind the scenes to get the community support, the council support to go forward with her agenda. But I don't think that any, short of totally wrecking everything, I think it's much easier to wreck something than it is to make vast improvements on it from an electorate standpoint. So I think there will be progress on those goals. I don't know how transformative it will seem 4 years from now. Those years will go pretty fast.
We'll see 2 new Democrats take council seats in wards 1 and 4. How much of a learning curve are they facing? Will they be able to jump right in, or will the council need to slow it down a bit?
Well, I think you always face a learning curve when you get into this job. It's like drinking from a fire hose because you have 10 million different things you have constituents who are complaining about things, and you have to deal with that and take care of their concerns. And then you also have just learning how a city runs. I mean, you can learn a lot on the campaign trail, but you don't until you're actually in there and you understand the multitude of decisions that need to be made to balance a whole bunch of different things. You don't really understand what you're in for. And so these folks will definitely have a learning curve.
Even with Lane Santa Cruz having worked in Romero's office for a stint, I think the extra burden of actually being the person on the council is a whole lot. There's a whole lot more to pay attention to than whatever specific bit of responsibility you had working in a council office. So both she and Nikki Lee are going to have to do some work before they're sworn in, even, to try and get up to speed.
And I think Lane Santa Cruz, with her experience in the Ward 1 office with Regina Romero when she was on the council, she's going to have to be able to set herself apart from how things were run, how things were managed. She'll have to come in and sort of establish herself as an independent person who might do things or want to do things a little differently than her predecessor did when she was in the office.
She'll be trying to not live in that shadow.
I think so.
And I think Lane probably is more to the left than Regina is. And so I think you'll see her pushing some things that you wouldn't have seen Regina pushing. For example, one of the things that she talked about on the campaign trail was that she was opposed to the Broadway widening. She thought that it was not bicycle or pedestrian friendly enough and didn't need to be 6 lanes. That was something that only one other person on the Tucson City Council, Steve Kosachik, believed back when they took the votes on it. So, if we see more of that from her, it's tough to bring other people on board with that kind of agenda.
Let's move on to Sanctuary. That failed in a landslide this week. But the organizers said on Tuesday night that they plan to try and bring it back. Do you think another round will have a different result?
I don't think it will if it is structured similarly to what was put forward in this initiative. I think the problem wasn't so much the idea of it, the protecting families, protecting people. It was the specifics of what they laid out what could and couldn't happen, and the kind of straitjacket that would put on Tucson police, not to mention dealing with federal authorities and lawsuits and state shared revenue in question should it have passed. So I think what should happen is that the organizers from 205, the new mayor, the council, and the police chief should get together, and with the citizens committees that are involved with how the police operate, and put many of those points from the initiative into the general orders, so they will be operationally put into place, even if they're not in the actual initiative, kind of in the rule of law. I think there's another way to accommodate and to accomplish those goals without having a redo, which I can't imagine would fare much, if at all, better than what we saw last night.
Do you think voters really understood the complexities that Sarah mentioned, or did they take emotional votes?
I think a little bit of both. Certainly this initiative had broader impacts than just on immigration. And I think a lot of people understood that. And just looking at those numbers, that overwhelming loss points to there were a whole lot of Democrats that you would think would be generally receptive to the idea of, if not specifically a sanctuary city law, at least not working with the Trump administration. But they still said no. A whole lot of people who voted for Regina Romero to be mayor said no on Prop 205. I think there is, as you were saying, some room for the backers of the initiative and other folks to go to what is still an all-Democratic city council and mayor and work to get maybe broaden what is in the general orders and make that a little bit more towards what they might want. Or there's nothing that says that the city council itself can't pass a law that would go beyond just general orders and put it into city code.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 people said no to this. The organizers, I think, their hearts were in the right place, as we heard a lot during this campaign, but the idea just wasn't selling. And kudos to them for getting the signatures to get it on the ballot and for all the door knocking that they did. But door knocking can't compete with more than $300,000 in advertising thrown against you in today's political world. It just doesn't work, clearly, because otherwise they would have done better yesterday. I think the fact that they got this as far as they did and didn't go out and raise money to actually try to get their own message out was a colossal blunder. It's like taking the ball halfway down the field and deciding you've scored a touchdown. And that was a big handicap to them, not being able to really fight back against what the opponents were saying. And you just saw how the opponents pretty much framed it as, hey, we're sympathetic to their concerns. We just think that the unintended consequences of this are too much for the city to bear. And I think there's also a certain reluctance among some voters to say, hey, we want to declare ourselves a sanctuary city and put ourselves in the middle of a big national controversy. And what will the state legislature do to us after this happens? And what will the federal government do to us after this happens? And I think that probably affected a lot of the votes.
Sarah?
I don't think that I don't think the no campaign, there was a no campaign started fairly early in the process, but then the bigger, more business community campaign started fairly late. So I think in this case, I don't know that it was so much the money as the message and the idea that, when the proponents of 205 came into the Star's editorial board for an interview, my first question was about what specifically about TPD and Tucson Police is this in response to? And they said it's not. It's not in response to Tucson Police Department in specific. It's about the Trump agenda. And I think voters really did understand that nuance and made the decision that we're not solving a problem locally. It's something that kind of it goes beyond. And I think voters were able to make that distinction.
All right, what can we learn from this week's election that helps set up the 2020 election? Are any cities looking at that sanctuary vote, trying to decide if they should go for something like that? Do we have any candidates we'll see coming back? What do you guys think?
I think maybe here and maybe more broadly across the country, the fact that the organizers of 205 overreached a little bit in what they were trying to do maybe changed the tenor of the conversation around what is reasonable and possible. They moved the Overton window in discussions about sanctuary cities. They went a little bit too far and fell flat on their face, basically. But they also made it so that people who were maybe not so inclined to support a measure like that might be a little bit more in the future if it were dialed back a little bit.
Even if they don't come back with initiative try number 2. I think that they accomplished some of their goals by getting this on the table, and it's part of the mainstream conversation now.
We've got a year out between now and 2020.
But I would say that cycle has more than started by now.
It most definitely has, but I think the conversations that are going to take place in that cycle have not. We don't know who's going to be the Democratic nominee, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of defeating Donald Trump if the Democrats actually, of course the Democrats want to do that, but we have to see who they end up nominating. That will affect our Senate race here in Arizona with Mark Kelly versus Martha McSally, a Democratic presidential candidate who seems more centrist, probably has a better chance in Arizona, and as a result that would boost Kelly's fortunes. And I think we're going to have to see how this whole impeachment thing plays out and what people's impressions of that are. Tom O'Halloran is running in a district that voted for Donald Trump. Are they going to be upset with him for voting for impeachment and take it out on them? And will Republicans finally get a decent candidate in District 1, which they've struggled to do for most of this decade?
And we'll remind people that's the district that goes from Oro Valley to Utah.
Oro Valley to Utah, most of eastern Arizona, a lot of conservative Democrats and the Native American reservations, and also a lot of Republicans up in
and some hippies in Flagstaff.
And some hippies in Flagstaff, for sure. So it's a really complicated district, and it's certainly one that is one of the most competitive in Arizona.
My thanks to you three for joining us today.
While she campaigned for the primary and general elections, Arizona 360 sat down with Regina Romero to discuss her vision for the city and what set her apart from the competition. Now, as mayor-elect, after a win that garnered national attention, we spoke to her again to get a better understanding of some of her immediate next steps and what Tucsonans should expect.
What I'd like to do is put together advisory councils to help me with climate action planning, with economic development, with quality of life infrastructure investment. I'd love to be able to sit down immediately and put together a memorandum of understanding and interjurisdictional work with the Pascuayaqui tribe and the Tohono Nation and raise their flags in the council chambers. I want to work in solidarity for the benefit of our communities with those nations. Immediately, we're going to start developing the relationships that we have with our congressional delegation so that we can go advocate to Washington, D.C. For additional funding for infrastructure and climate resiliency grants. That's what I'm thinking of doing immediately right off the track. It's very exciting. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but I really, with the platform that I ran with, I want to put it into action at the first 180 days that I'm new mayor of Tucson.
What are the big dangers that you really know that are out there that you have to watch out for on the way?
What concerns me about the near future is the possibility of our economy slowing down. There's signs of an economic slowdown, and so we have to prepare ourselves as a city before the economic slowdown hits. And the way we can do that is by looking for continued investment in infrastructure. I've always believed that one of the most important responsibilities of governments is investing in our infrastructure, because infrastructure leverages private investment. And so the way I see our continued partnership in looking for infrastructure funds is that we can partner with a state legislature and the governor on investing on I-19, which is a connector to the Mexican market, right? Those investments will help keep workers working. And so I understand that preparing ourselves for the worst case scenario is going to help us feel the economics slow down much less.
Prop 205, in the end, doesn't get the votes. Does that give you more leeway to work with the state, with the legislature, with our congressional delegation?
My door is open to the organizers of Prop 205. I want to continue working for the betterment of every single one of our residents, including our undocumented residents of Tucson. And so if we unify, if all of the stakeholders sit together, devise a plan, ACLU, immigrant rights groups, the city of Tucson, the TPD police chief, our city attorney, and write ordinances and laws in the city of Tucson that could continue advancing that agenda, I think that is the best way to go about it.
One other Prop 409, what message does it send to voters that continue to refuse to raise pay, and is that fair?
The lack of adequate pay to elected officials severely limits the people that run, because heads of households can't pay their bills. And young people graduated out of college that might have the brightest ideas can't pay their mortgage or car loan or student loans if they run for elected office.
What do you think your candidacy and your rising to the seat of mayor of the city of Tucson says to girls and young women who are looking at their futures and wondering what it may hold for them?
I think I have a very big responsibility. And I've carried that responsibility ever since the first time I ran back in 2007, that we made history by electing the first Latina council member in our city. And so I've understood the past 12 years that I am, to many young women and girls, a model that they had not seen before. And so I would hope that young women across Tucson and across Arizona understand that there is a seat at the table for our voices. That's why I felt it was so important for me to look for my replacement in Ward 1 and advocate for a woman of color, to run for that seat, because I understand, being the only Latina for the past 12 years on the council, I understand the importance of adding those voices.
Mayor-elect Romero, thank you very much for sitting down with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
This week, Pima County School Superintendent Dustin Williams swore in the newest member of TUSD's governing board. Bruce Burke was one of 15 applicants to come forward after Mark Stegeman announced his resignation early last month. The retired attorney will fill the rest of Stegeman's term through the end of 2020. We discussed how he plans to approach the job. Bruce Burke may be TUSD's newest board member, but he isn't new to the job. Burke previously served from 2003 to 2010 and was first elected the same year as current board president Adelita Grijalva.
I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
Burke says since leaving the board nearly 10 years ago, he's stayed active in the community and remains passionate about education.
So when this opportunity arose, it seemed like a natural fit. I can come back to the board, serve 13 months, not going to run. So it gives me a lot of freedom and an opportunity.
Now, when you came on originally in 2003, you came on with current board chair, board president Adelita Grijalva. What does and you worked with her for 7 years, what does that relationship mean as you come back this time?
Well, I think it's important to have good relations with other board members. And going beyond Adelita Grijalva, I do know 3 of the other board members fairly well, or 2, and I just spent the morning with Rachel Sedgwick. So I think personal relations are the foundation for good boardsmanship, and I'm looking forward to serving again with all of them. What makes a good, successful, effective board? Well, I think that first of all you have to appreciate that you're just one of 5. You cannot lead alone. The superintendent really is in charge of administration, but you're on the board to set policy along with your colleagues. So you need to listen to the community, take that into account, and then with the assistance of the superintendent and staff, come up with good, sound policies, hopefully by consensus. I think any consensus-driven policy decisions are the best. Defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
After Burke was first sworn in 16 years ago, he shared a similar opinion about the importance of achieving unanimity on the board.
There are going to be fights and there are going to be issues that come to the board, but I think that everyone will be respectful of our differences and try to work to consensus where we can find it.
What is the value that you bring to this board?
I would cite 2 things. First, it's my prior experience. I don't profess to know everything there is to know about current issues, but I have a general understanding of a district. I've worked as a board member for 8 years, served as president. So that's one quality that I bring. And the second is, as an attorney, I was a problem solver. I did litigation, but I also know how to resolve things amicably and my hope is to bring those skills to the board and work with others on the board to get good results for our students.
What do you think are the top priorities facing both the board and the district, TUSD in general?
Well, let me start with what I think faces the state as the biggest issue, and that is underfunded public education. That's a legislative responsibility. I know that the public supports more funding for public education, and I think our legislators need to hear that. Because we're underfunded, every decision by the school board has to be really focused on trying to make sure that the dollars are getting into the classroom as much as possible. That's the challenge that we face.
Can these challenges that you're facing at TUSD, can they be met by sort of steady incremental change, or do you need something more fundamental, more urgent?
You know, that's a good question. My sense is that this is a big ship and it takes a while to turn. I think that the progress is being made, so I'm not sure it's right to characterize it as either radical change or incremental change, but it's important to focus on the fact that we need change. And how we get there, I think, is one of the skills that the board has to acquire and work on and work with the superintendent to accomplish.
Now, as you said, you're not interested in running again. This time next year, there'll be an election for not just the seat that you're filling for Mark Stegeman, but 2 other seats as well. So pretty much you have a year here to get traction. Is that enough time, and how do you prioritize what gets done?
Well, it is a short term, but I'm really in a position not to have to worry about being reelected. I did that twice, or at least I had to be elected twice. And that's a challenge that you have to spend time doing that. So I'll be able to devote my full energy to my board membership and working with the superintendent. I think it's a plus for me, and I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Tell me an issue that perhaps is significant or dear to your heart.
You know, there are several, and I've kind of mentioned those. Let me mention one other, and that is my concern is that we find an honorable way to resolve the long-standing DSEG case that this district has operated under court supervision for over 40 years. I think we can bring that to a conclusion. I think it's time to do that and to do it honorably with some goals to be set. I appreciate that the district has work to do in that area. I intend to help with that, but I do think it's time to bring that case to a closure within the next year or two.
Bruce Burke, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. To get in touch, visit us on social media or send an email to Arizona360@azpm.org. We'll see you next week.